And for right now, Willis's watchdogs are back with me and want to get your reaction on the fact that Fannie and Freddie seem to be leaking more money than that BP rig is leaking oil. Let's welcome back our guests, Doug Flynn, Erica Payne, and Nina Easton. Erica, let's start with you. You know, this is a huge problem, and a lot of people say you can't pull Fannie and Freddie out of the mix because they are the mortgage market.
They are. Unfortunately, you can't pull them out now. Over the long term, we've got to eliminate Fannie and Freddie, but it's got to be done in a really careful and systematic way so it doesn't cause too much disruption. All right, Doug, this is like your bailiwick here. Fannie, Freddie, in lots of parts of the country, everybody gets a loan that has them involved in some way. Well, how do you fix this?
Well, it goes back to the original problem of the fact that they allowed people to put down less than 20% and continue to buy those loans. And you can't do that. Putting down 0 down, 10% down is the whole reason why when they released that we got into the problems that we got into. So now you're in for this. You've got to fix it because you can't let the housing market subside any further. But going forward, you cannot continue to let people who can't afford to buy a house and then let the government buy it and bail it out if it doesn't work.
Gerri, I'd love to. Can I just jump back on this for just a minute? This is one of the great misconceptions about Fannie and Freddie because one of its mandates is affordability. And so we made a decision that, you know, let's have more people afford houses because we think that's good for society. But if you actually look at the portfolio of Fannie and Freddie, it was a really small portion of problematic loans. Out of a $5 trillion, it was just about 2% that were a subprime problem. The larger problem was in people that had FICO scores of 720 and above. So it's not an affordability problem.
I think you got to say, though, Erica, really, there was a mix of loans here. There was lots of subprime, but the real problem now is the cleanup. Nina, to you, I think it's critical at this point to see if we have the political will to really do anything about this. That's a real problem now. We know what the mess is. We get that. We see the details. But I don't see Washington coming up with anything at all to fix this.
Because, Gerri, it's more emotionally satisfying, particularly for liberals, to just blame the big banks and to say that nobody else had anything to do with it. The fact of the matter is, as the Wall Street Journal said in your earlier piece, Fannie and Freddie were at the heart of this. And they did have a large portfolio of subprime and Alt-A loans. They loosened, more importantly, they loosened the lending standards of the loans that they purchased so that people didn't have to put documents down, so that people didn't have to put money down. And that trickled down to these problem loans that are at the heart of the crisis.
Again,
and until we acknowledge that,
I think subprime was a critical part of the mortgage meltdown. And I have to say I disagree with you. I think subprime mortgages really mattered, but then so did some of the mortgages that went to really wealthy people.
I mean, the real problem was that we didn't have a debt market discipline, so we actually don't have an effective
financial market. We don't have any discipline when it comes to debt.
The big problem
so it was a bigger problem.
A whole continuous thought that real estate only goes up, it only goes up, and everything was prefaced on that. And the fact is, if you didn't learn it in the 90s, you didn't learn it now.
Well, I agree with you totally. Let's get to this next story. She claims she was fired from Citigroup for being too hot, but now Debrahlee is in hot water with her new employer, JP Morgan Chase, for not keeping her mouth shut. This as she makes the TV talk show rounds. All right, guys, I have to tell you, the stuff she wore, I wore something worse last week. You know what I'm saying here? Doug, I want to have you jump in because you're the single fella here. Why don't you represent your sex? Should she be fired?
Should she be fired? Well, you know, there's an appropriate dress that you're supposed to wear. I think that I don't think there's anything wrong with dressing appropriately. I didn't really follow this story, to be honest with you, because, you know, I'm pretty good at separating, you know, when you go to work, you're there to do a job, and if other people are easily distracted.
You don't think the pictures we're seeing right now are provocative in any way? I think that's kind of normal dress, frankly. Erica, what do you think?
I think it's absolutely normal, but it's really fascinating to me that Jamie Dimon wants to keep, you know, the babe quiet. You know, if I were him, I'd let her keep on talking to keep, you know, her attractiveness away from the story about his unattractiveness as a leader of an institution that helped lead to the financial crisis.
What is unattractive about Jamie Dimon?
Well, what's unattractive about the industry as a whole is that they've spent $600 million in the last 18 months to try to make sure that legislators don't put in a set of rules that will help this not happen again. I find that really unattractive.
Nina, has Wall Street been effective in shutting down Washington on reform?
Yes.
You know, you look at financial reform, there's a whole bill there, but for the love of God, it doesn't do that much.
There's a bill there that, frankly, conservatives aren't that happy with that is going to pass, and I think it's a classic case of where the president said he was going to act in a bipartisan fashion and didn't. So now you've got a bill where the Republicans are completely off board on it, and it doesn't look at Fannie and Freddie. And I think, you know, the Republicans in this sort of last-minute political ploy tried to throw that into the mix. That's something that they should have been looking at going way back a year ago. Now we're seeing legislation, you know, across the board, across the aisle, looking at Fannie and Freddie. They need to take time to do it right this time.
Well, I got to tell you, we're preoccupied with stories like this, what the woman is wearing to work. I feel like it's like 1970, and I have a Virginia Slims on the table or something. It's like a different era. Somebody help me out here. Erica, to you. I mean, aren't we done talking about this stuff? Isn't
you know what?
Equality
it's
everywhere?
so sad, but we apparently are not. And a lot of my friends from business school, instead of working in the nonprofit and policy sector like I do, went into banks, and they remain some of the most sexist institutions in the country. So we still obviously have a problem.
Doug, you're familiar with these fellas. You work with them all the time.
I mean, there is still a bit of an old boy network that goes on. There's no doubt about it. But if you go into that, it's almost like you go into this dressing this way looking for a lawsuit. I don't really know if that
So you think she was looking for a lawsuit? Is Gerri looking for a lawsuit? She looks pretty good today.
She wants to sue her new employer, too. And probably,
save us from ourselves here, Nina.
All I can say, you guys, is I think she's looking for a TV gig, and I think she's going to get it. So I think she knew how to make the process work for her. I thought she was in the wrong career
path. That was my view,
exactly.
and television would be a perfect fit for her.
So she'll give the money honey a run for her money, I guess.
All right, thanks, Doug, Erica, Nina. Great stuff. Really appreciate your comics. Next, we all want to punish someone for the disaster in the Gulf, but a new plan that Congress is rolling out may punish you more than the oil companies. The CEO of Gulf Oil joins me next with some answers. Don't go away.